All right, guys, so this is gonna be the video for how to now on the pop art assignment, draw your boxes and to be able to get the right measurements and so forth. I'm more than likely gonna be doing this for the video just so that way it fits on screen like this, but it will be the same thing if you guys are wanting to do your image in a more portrait style, which is the long way like this. Now, if you guys decide to do it like this, which is landscape style, okay, where it's more longer, then that's fine too. This is gonna be your choice. I'm not gonna say you have to do it one way or the other. What's up, Brandon? You have a question? Okay, that's probably by accident. If you have questions, you guys are more than free to ask, okay? So I just wanted to make sure that you guys know I am recording, but you can ask questions. So again, it can be like this where it's landscape, or it can be like this where it is, I'm sorry, this is portrait, and then this is landscape, okay? Because you think about landscape when you see a horizon and a sunset and all that, and then when you think about portraits, portraits are, more long. So this is the difference between the two. So in case you didn't know that, okay? So we are going to be using rulers in this case. If you don't have a ruler, I just mentioned right now to the first period class that you can use a piece of cardboard. This is a piece of mat board, so you can see how heavy it is because it doesn't really move too much. So you can use something like this. I did also mention that if you guys bought drawing paper, those pads usually have a thick cardboard backing that you can also use if you want to recycle it. So that's an option too. If you want to use regular cardboard because you have that, a lot of it in the house, maybe you're going to recycle a box or something, that's fine as well. And then your other option, of course, is using a sheet of paper, but that's going to be flimsy, so it'll be harder, but you can at least have a guide for straight lines and so forth if you want to do it like that, okay? So I will be using a ruler, but if you guys do have a piece of cardboard, something that you can do for measurement, now it might not be exact, but if we look at the 1 inch, and I kind of put my fingers on that, it's a little bit smaller than 2 fingers. So if I come over here and I just do this, and on my finger, at least the size that I have, it's a little bit smaller. So it's somewhere about like right here. So like right here with this part of my finger, if you guys want to just do that, even if it's not exactly 1 inch, at least you have a more or less measurement. Now, in order to get that same measurement for the rest of my paper ruler, what you want to do, so that way you know that you are making an exact size, you get a sheet of paper, you put it right next to it like this to mark it. So that way when you come right here and scoot this over, the areas that you're marking this are going to be exactly the same. So if you have to make yourself a paper ruler, at least you know how many inches you're actually applying. So that way, all of the boxes that you draw are gonna be exactly the same size. Okay, so that's your best bet for those of you guys making your own rulers. Now, I would still label, even though you're like, I can count them, I would still label, just make it easier for yourself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 7. I think on the video, I only go up to 6 originally, but this is gonna be a little bit bigger. So I want to make sure that I incorporate it. I'm actually going to add the 8th just to be on the safe side. So I still have my paper here. And even though it's a little bit shorter, just so that way I know where that inch lies over here towards the end, because I'm going to have to extend it. And I just want to make sure that I'm marking it and not leaving it at the 7 and thinking, oh, well, this is the same size as this. So I would mark it as many times as you can fit it on whichever size of ruler you have for yourself. Okay. So now at this point, what I'm going to end up doing is putting the actual, paper ruler aside, but I'll show you how to get there if you don't have the exact measurement over here. But I'm going to be measuring my paper. Now, if you notice on the practice, the one that I had over here, you'll notice that it looks nice actually with the white border around the side. And I can go ahead and also do things like the black outlining and so forth like that. And it's just going to stand out. It looks like it's framed. So I'm going to do the same thing on this. And so my measurement for this, I'm going to try to measure it off where, if I'm looking at it with my ruler and I put the measurement here, this paper is at 8.5. So if I want to give myself at least 1 inch border, I can do that. So I can mark the inch over here just to kind of get a more or less. I'm going to just make a tiny little mark because I'm going to be changing that. And then if this is at a half and I'm coming over here at a half, I can either do that half. Now, if I want it to be exact, you know, I would rather that this part of it, rather than the outside, be even. So if I come over here and I measure this, it's gonna be at 6.5. If I'm doing 6.5, I know for most people, they're gonna get confused as far as where to be making the measurement. So I'm actually going to, instead of doing 1 inch border, I'm going to do 1 inch and 1/4 border. So I'm gonna go ahead, I know how to measure that, but for those of you guys that are not good at measuring, the reason why, like I said, because I wanna be able to get 6 inches here instead of the 6.5. So it's a little bit easier when I'm placing the markings for the middle. So now that I know that it's gonna be 1.5 inches this way, I need to make sure that I double check over here. And here, see, it's 11. So I don't have to worry about halves or anything. So instead of doing I'm just gonna do 1 inch from the top. So if you're working on an 8x10 paper, these are the measurements you're gonna have to worry about. And I'm figuring it out on camera, guys, so you don't have to do this math. It's gonna be a little bit easier for you, okay? So at this point, like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and put 1 inch. So it's gonna be 1 inch from the top. So make sure that, you know, and we're looking at it at the top. If you're looking at it in portrait style, excuse me, right now on the landscape style, which is the way I have it flat like here, it's on the side. So I'm gonna do 1 inch and 1 inch over here. I'm gonna do the same thing at the bottom over here. So 1 inch and 1 inch. And I'm marking it right here on this one because on this ruler, my inch doesn't start here. It starts at the first little line. Okay, that's something you guys need to also be aware of because that can throw you off in itself. If you guys don't know that when you have rulers, and I'll show you another example here. So let me get a couple of rulers that I have here. So if I'm looking at this ruler, you want to make sure that if it's not right at the edge, I do have a little tiny line in the middle of there. And then the same thing for this ruler. If I look at it, my 0 actually starts right here. So if I get closer, you can kind of see that. My 0 doesn't start right at the edge. My 0 starts right here at the line. And that's where people will mess up when they're making measurements. And the kids always get the lines all crooked. So be very careful that you understand your rulers as well as you're working with them, okay? So I'm gonna come right here and do the same thing. Now, instead, on the long side, guys, the measurement is not gonna be 1 inch, it's gonna be 1 inch and 1/4. So if I look at my whole inch here, this is the half. The other longer line that falls in between are the quarters. So I'm gonna go ahead and make my little line right here at the 1 1/4. So right now, the measurements for those of you guys working on an 8x10 paper, as of right now, it's 1 inch on the shorter side and it's 1 1/4 on the longer side. So those are things that you guys should be writing, especially those of you guys doing your practice right now, write that down. So on the short side, these are notes you guys should be taking, okay, just on the side. So short side is 1 inch. And then the long side is 1 1/4 inch, 1/4, okay? So now that I've got that, I'm gonna go ahead, and no, I did not mark this one, so I need to make sure I get all my markings. So I'm kind of going backwards here just because I have my ruler in this format, but it doesn't really matter as long as both markings, so the edge of the paper is on one side versus the other. If not, you can turn it around and do it the opposite way, okay? So now that I have that, now I know exactly where my lines are gonna go, and I should be able to put it right on each line. Another thing where I see people mess up, where they start doing their lines and it looks crooked, is because like on this little line that they put it, it's on the top, and then on this little line, it's on the bottom. You need to make sure that you line them exactly, guys, because if you're not lining up those markings, the line will look crooked in the end, okay? So I have one line there, and then I'm gonna make the one on the opposite side. Make sure it's straight before I actually mark it. And I'm only taking it as far as the markings that I have here. So I'm not going beyond that, because if not, I'm gonna have to do erasing. Like, I'm probably gonna have to erase a little bit of that, but you wanna try to your best to do the least amount of erasing as possible. I'm gonna make sure that it's on the same side of the line as I draw that. I also want to make sure, the other thing where people mess up, guys, is that their pencils are not sharp for this part of the project. And if your pencil is not sharp, there's a chance that, like, if it has a dull tip, that it's not actually doing the line correctly. Like, you'll be pushing it closer to one side, and then as you move out, it goes off. So then that's when your lines will look crooked. So be very careful with that, okay? So now that I have my center area, I'm gonna go ahead and start dividing this. So originally this is at 6 inches. So what I wanna do is I wanna make sure that I put my ruler. I wanna make sure that I'm right in the middle, and then right at the 3. So it's gonna be a 3-inch box. So it's gonna be an inch bigger than what we did for the practice. I'm gonna come this way, and then I'm gonna come right here and place it, make sure it's right in the middle. And then right here, I'm gonna come here and make sure that I'm at the 3, okay? So when I line this up, if I don't have a long enough ruler, also for those of you guys using paper rulers and they're too short, this is why I had you guys do the markings. So that way, when you're doing your measurement over here, and let's say you do 1 1/4, let's say you kind of figure this out and you kind of say, well, this is half, this is 1/4 because it's right in between that, and this is right here, right in between that. You'll know that this is the 1 1/4 mark. So this is why it's better just to do yourself your favor and make sure that each individual one is the same, okay? So at this point, for those of you guys using a paper ruler, in this case, how it's 8 here, I would draw my line. I know that it has to be longer, but if I'm making the measurements over here, you should be able to apply them. But if in case you can't, because you're doing the line like this, then I would go ahead and mark the 8, move it over just so I can get 1 more inch, and then you'll know exactly where it's gonna end, for those of you guys doing it from the center out, okay? But if you are using a paper ruler, and I put this, you can see clearly that that's 3 inches. This is why I told you guys do this, because I pretty much got it just by putting this, like, it's not the middle of the finger, it's a little bit off to get that inch, at least on my size of fingers, okay? So hopefully it's the same for you, but if it's not, it should be close, okay? So I have the 3, I'm gonna go ahead and use my ruler because I have a ruler, but if you don't, you can use the paper ruler. So if you were using a paper ruler, let me say this on camera because some of you guys might come into this problem. And let's say you don't reach all the way from the top to the bottom and you had marked 3 inches, just do another line in the middle here. So for the 3 inches here, so that way when you bring your paper ruler, you can go ahead and draw the line as far as you can take it. So I would draw my line up to here, and I'll go ahead and do it with this one so you can see that just because I don't have a ruler doesn't mean I can't get those lines straight. So I'll take my paper ruler as far as I can go, and that way when I move it across and just make sure that it lines up with both areas, I can still get that long line even if it's not 100% as long as the area, okay? So again, it's 3 inches from here. So on the side, we got 1 1/4 inches on both sides, and then 1 inch on the top and the bottom. And then from here to here in the middle, it's 3 inches, okay? So now that we've got that, now we got to divide this one. So I have 9 inches from the top to the bottom. And I have to divide this by 3. What is going to be my measurement, guys? You guys tell me if you want to just type it in the chat. Anybody know? If I have 9 and I have to divide this into 3 sections, how much is each section going to be? Anybody want to take a guess? Well, that's actually multiplying it. So at this point, what I'm going to end up doing is I have to divide it. So what is 9 divided by 3? 3. Yes, thank you, Kayla. So if it's divided by 3 and we've got 3, what I'm going to end up doing is marking it at the 3. So I'm just going to go ahead. So basically our boxes are going to be 3 by 3s. So I'm going to go ahead and make a little marking here. And then again, I'm going to go ahead and make a little marking right here at the 6 because 6 from 3 is another 3. So I don't have to move my ruler. I'll just mark it at the 3 and the 6. And then I'll do the same thing on the opposite side. So I'm going to come over here, make sure my ruler's on point. And then I'm going to mark it again at the 3. And then I'm going to mark it at the 6. Okay. And that should give me pretty much straight lines as long as I make sure that it's on the same side of that little marking. Because remember, I told you some people will, like on this side, they'll put it on the top of the little marking, and then on this side, they'll put it in the bottom, and then the line looks crooked. So you want to make sure that wherever you marked it, you put it on the same side of that little mark, and it should come out straight, especially if you have a sharp pencil. Okay, then the boxes, and I know I'm doing this very light, so you can probably barely see it on camera. If anything, I'll go ahead and I'll push on these lines a little bit darker, so that way on camera you can actually see it, but you guys should keep it light at home. You should not be doing the lines as dark as where you can see it here on camera, okay? I'm only doing this again so that way you guys can actually see this, because if I do keep them light, especially what I noticed yesterday when I was doing the flower, and then I saw the playback, you could barely see it. It was so light. I mean, you can see it, but you know, for the purpose and the sake of the example, and for you guys being able to see the lines, I'll go ahead and I'll push a little bit darker so you guys can see that, okay? So this is what's gonna be for today, other than, of course, drawing your little box that you're gonna need for the one that you're gonna be drawing. So remember, it's the same thing as what we did for the practice. So you're just going to line up the second sheet of paper. So this is a different paper, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that I line up the corner. And then I'm just gonna make a little tiny mark at where this box lines up, excuse me, and then this box lines up. Now, because I have it in place and I can kind of see through it, I know you can't see it on camera, but I can see it here. I'm just gonna draw a little tiny dot where the boxes meet in the corner, because I see it right here. So this is actually, I'm able to see through it a little bit. So I'm just gonna mark it just as a guide. So that way it's less measurement for me. And when I come over here to draw the outline of my box, I can go ahead and make sure that it's straight. So I'm just gonna use this ruler over here. So as long as you have a straight edge, see, it's not even a ruler, it's just a paper, cardboard paper that I'm using. So that way that line is straight, okay? And this is gonna be the box now that I'm going to draw my final image on. Some of you guys had some really good ideas. I had a couple of you guys submit to me a couple of images. I'm not gonna say them on camera because then I'll have like maybe 16 people copy those ideas. So that way it can stay your own. But yeah, so you do need to get your reference picture. If you don't have your reference picture already where I gave you the 100 back. So again, I'm gonna repeat that one more time. If you do not have the reference already submitted to me on Google Classroom, and I did not return the 100, you guys can only get up to this step. After that, you do need to submit that reference, because I have to give you the 100 to say, yep, that is perfect. You're gonna go ahead and do that one. And so once I give you the okay, you're gonna come over here. So if this was me, I don't want people copying me, but if this was me, because I'm a big fan of Gears of War, like I would probably do the logo where it has the actual gear and the little skull right in the middle. So I would do my circle. So I would draw myself the first part of the logo. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that for me, because this is something I would do. Okay, and then I would go ahead and just create the little gear look. So I'm just gonna do this and just make sure that it looks like a gear. Now on Gears of War, the main logo does have, and I'm not looking at a reference, but you guys need to look at a reference, okay? It has another circle here in the middle. So it's the center of the gear. And then the actual skull is a little bit crooked. It's not straight. So I'm gonna pretty much break this up into circles first. Remember I showed you guys how to draw using your shapes. So that's how you should approach whatever is the drawing that you guys are gonna do for the final. Use your shapes to be able to draw it. So now that I kind of have the shapes in place, now I'm gonna go and make sure that my outline is nice and clean. So I'm gonna go and take the time and make sure that everything is nice and tidy. And then I'll erase the lines that I don't need. Now, for those of you guys that remembered me saying, you need to take your time on this one. See, I'm gonna change it a little bit because I didn't like the way that part of the circle ended off. So I'm gonna change it. If you guys are real clean with this first one, then all you're doing is pretty much tracing the rest. So all you have to do is just concentrate on that one. So let me erase this because I'm going to change it a little bit. This is gonna get changed over here. This is the part, that's why you wanna make sure that everything looks nice and neat before you start with the drawing. And that's why you guys need to make sure that you use, and honestly, I don't even know if this is as many things that it has, because I'm not looking at the actual logo. I'm just trying to remember what it kind of looked like. So I'm doing this from memory, but you guys need to be drawing from looking at your references. This is why I want you guys to send me a reference, so you already have it in play and you already have it set for yourself, okay? So you take the time on this one. And then, and I'll keep going with this one because I'm gonna actually work on one with you guys and show you guys step by step on the final. It's kind of the same thing as the practice, but still, so that way you can see a final piece, okay? So, and then I would, of course, draw the skull in this particular logo. It has the head going this way, and then it's got the mouth, and then it's kind of got like these, not so much teeth, but it looks like it's kind of like coming apart because of the swarm. And then of course it's got the eyes here. I'm just doing a more or less. I'll go back and I'll actually clean the skeletal feature of it. And if I actually have this, I might be able to, because I know the head does something like this, like it's got the shape of the skull. So it does something like this. It does something like this. And then the eyes look a little bit more mean that I remember from that skull. So they kind of have a different shape. Again, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna clean this logo up because I wanna make it good. So I'm gonna fix mine when I do my final. I'm not looking at a reference. You guys need to make it look like it actually should be the logo that you're creating, okay? So now at this point, once I have the finish, like let's say I do have a good version of mine, again, I'm gonna redo mine, but so I'm not gonna get that. This is all you would need for today, for those of you guys that did get cleared for the actual reference. If you didn't submit your reference, guys, you can't do what I just did right now, which is draw the first one. After that, next week is when we're gonna be applying these to here. So the only part you have to get up to today, or where you should be at, is this step right here, okay? Now, those of you guys that are not ready for this because you didn't submit the reference to me, you need to get it no later, the clearance, by Friday. So if you're not starting on the drawing part today, you need to at least draw your boxes to get them ready. And at least that major one, the one that you're going to, because that was pretty easy. It didn't take me very long to be able to be ready for next week if you're barely going to be starting that drawing on that, because this is an easy project, guys. It's one of the fastest ones that we're probably going to do all year. So it shouldn't take you too long to do this. This one's probably going to be even faster than the one we just did on the last one, just because of the steps that we're taking. Okay. So please, guys, I'm asking that at least by the end of today, you have at least the boxes already drawn out, which I already went over the sizes for you guys on the video, as well as draw the first box that you are going to be applying your drawing to. The moment I give you that 100, you can already start with this process. But do not start applying this to this yet, because that's what we're going to be working on next week. So if I gave you the thumbs up, if I gave you the 100 back, I believe I did give it to, at least for these students, there was Kayla, Alexis, Jorge, Cassandra, and I think Suzette are the only ones that I gave the 100% to, at least for my first period, okay? So you guys have permission to do this. The rest of you guys, like I said, you only are going to do the boxes and then try to get cleared with the 100 on the reference no later than Friday. So that way, at least you know when you come to me on, when I see you guys, because I see you on Monday for this class, for first period, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, okay, start the drawing part. So you'll start this, and while I do the next video that's gonna show you guys again, I'll do one more time, show you guys how to transfer. Then you can be working on that while I'm doing the transferring, and you actually see how to do that. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and end the video there.